never could have looked so cozy and neat if Hannah had not arranged every pot and pan a dozen times over, and laid the fire all ready for lighting the minute Miss Brooke came home. I also doubt if any young matron ever began life with so rich a supply of dusters, holders, and piece-bags, for Beth made enough to last till the silver wedding came round, and invented 3 different kinds of dishcloths for the express service of the bridal china. People who have all these things done for them never know what they lose, for the homeliest tasks get beautified if loving hands do them, and Meg found so many proofs of this that everything in her small nest, from the kitchen roller to the silver vase on her parlor table, was eloquent of home love and tender forethought. What happy times they had planning together! What solemn shopping excursions, what funny mistakes they made, and what shouts of laughter arose over Laurie's ridiculous bargains. In his love of jokes, this young gentleman, though nearly through college, was as much of a boy as ever. His last whim had been to bring with him on his weekly visits some new, useful, and ingenious article for the young housekeeper. Now a bag of remarkable clothespins, next a wonderful nutmeg grater which fell to pieces at the first trial, a knife cleaner that spoiled all the knives, or a sweeper that picked the nap neatly off the carpet and left the dirt, labor-saving soap that took the skin off one's hands, infallible cements which stuck firmly to nothing but the fingers of the deluded buyer, and every kind of tinware, from a toy savings bank for odd pennies to a wonderful boiler which would wash articles in its own steam with every prospect of exploding in the process. In vain Meg begged him to stop. John laughed at him, and Joe called him Mr. Toodles. He was possessed with a mania for patronizing Yankee ingenuity, and seeing his friends fitly furnished forth, so each week beheld some fresh absurdity. Everything was done at last, even to Amy's arranging different colored soaps to match the different colored rooms, and Beth's setting the table for the first meal. "Are you satisfied? Does it seem like home, and do you feel as if you should be happy here?" asked Mrs. March, as she and her daughter went through the new kingdom arm in arm, for just then they seemed to cling together more tenderly than ever. "Yes, mother, perfectly satisfied, thanks to you all, and so happy that I can't talk about it," with a look that was far better than words. "If she only had a servant or two it would be all right," said Amy, coming out of the parlor, where she had been trying to decide whether the bronze Mercury looked best on the whatnot or the mantelpiece. "Mother and I have talked that over, and I have made up my mind to try her way first. There will be so little to do, that with Lottie to run my errands and help me here and there, I shall only have enough work to keep me from getting lazy or homesick," answered Meg tranquilly. "Sally Moffat has 4, began Amy. "If Meg had 4, the house wouldn't hold them, and Master and Missus would have to camp in the garden," broke in Joe, who, enveloped in a big blue pinafore, was giving the last polish to the door-handles. "Sally isn't a poor man's wife, and many maids are in keeping with her fine establishment. Meg and John begin humbly, but I have a feeling that there will be quite as much happiness in the little house as in the big one. It's a great mistake for young girls like Meg to leave themselves nothing to do but dress, give orders, and gossip. When I was first married, I used to long for my new clothes to wear out or get torn, so that I might have the pleasure of mending them, for I got heartily sick of doing fancy work and tending my pocket handkerchief." "Why didn't you go into the kitchen and make messes, as Sally says she does to amuse herself, though they never turn out well, and the servants laugh at her?" said Meg. "I did after a while, not to mess, but to learn of Hannah how things should be done, that my servants need not laugh at me. It was play then, but there came a time when I was truly grateful that I not only possessed the will, but the power, to cook wholesome food for my little girls, and help myself when I could no longer afford to hire help. You begin at the other end, Meg dear, but the lessons you learn now will be of use to you by and by, when John is a richer man. For the mistress of a house, however splendid, should know how work ought to be done, if she wishes to be well and honestly served." "Yes, mother, I'm sure of that," said Meg, listening respectfully to the little lecture, for the best of women will hold forth upon the all-absorbing subject of housekeeping. "Do you know, I like this room most of all in my baby house," added Meg, a minute after, as they went upstairs and she looked into her well-stored linen closet. Beth was there, laying the snowy piles smoothly on the shelves, and exulting over the goodly array. All 3 laughed as Meg spoke, for that linen closet was a joke. You see, having said that if Meg married that Brooke she shouldn't have a cent of her money, Aunt March was rather in a quandary when time had appeased her wrath and made her repent her vow. She never broke her word, and was much exercised in her mind how to get round it, and at last devised a plan whereby she could satisfy herself. Mrs. Carroll, Florence's mamma, was ordered to buy, have made, and marked a generous supply of house and table linen, and send it as her present, all of which was faithfully done, but the secret leaked out, and was greatly enjoyed by the family, for Aunt March tried to look utterly unconscious, and insisted that she could give nothing but the old-fashioned pearls long promised to the first bride. That's a housewifely taste which I am glad to see. I had a young friend who set up housekeeping with 6 sheets, but she had finger bowls for company, and that satisfied her, said Mrs. March, patting the damask tablecloths with a truly feminine appreciation of their fineness. I haven't a single finger bowl, but this is a set-out that will last me all my days, Hannah says, and Meg looked quite contented, as well she might. A tall, broad-shouldered young fellow, with a cropped head, a felt basin of a hat, and a fly-away coat, came tramping down the road at a great pace, walked over the low fence without stopping to open the gate, straight up to Mrs. March, with both hands out, and a hearty, "Here I am, mother. Yes, it's all right." The last words were in answer to the look the elder lady gave him, a kindly, questioning look, which the handsome eyes met so frankly that the little ceremony closed, as usual, with a motherly kiss. "For Mrs. John Brooke, with the Maker's congratulations and compliments. Bless you, Beth. What a refreshing spectacle you are, Joe. Amy, you are getting altogether too handsome for a single lady." As Laurie spoke, he delivered a brown paper parcel to Meg, pulled Beth's hair ribbon, stared at Joe's bib pinafore, and fell into an attitude of mock rapture before Amy, then shook hands all round, and everyone began to talk. "Where is John?" asked Meg anxiously. "Stopped to get the license for tomorrow, ma'am." "Which side won the last match, Teddy?" inquired Joe, who persisted in feeling an interest in manly sports, despite her 19 years. "Ours, of course. Wish you'd been there to see." "How is the lovely Miss Randall?" asked Amy with a significant smile. "More cruel than ever. Don't you see how I'm pining away?" And Laurie gave his broad chest a sounding slap, and heaved a melodramatic sigh. "What's the last joke? Undo the bundle and see, Meg," said Beth, eyeing the knobby parcel with curiosity. "It's a useful thing to have in the house in case of fire or thieves," observed Laurie, as a watchman's rattle appeared, amid the laughter of the girls. "Any time when John is away and you get frightened, Mrs. Meg, just swing that out of the front window, and it will rouse the neighborhood in a jiffy. Nice thing, isn't it?" And Laurie gave them a sample of its powers that made them cover up their ears. "There's gratitude for you. And speaking of gratitude, reminds me to mention that you may thank Hannah for saving your wedding cake from destruction. I saw it going into your house as I came by, and if she hadn't defended it manfully I'd have had a pick at it, for it looked like a remarkably plummy one." "I wonder if you will ever grow up, Laurie," said Meg in a matronly tone. "I'm doing my best, ma'am, but can't get much higher, I'm afraid, as 6 feet is about all men can do in these degenerate days," responded the young gentleman, whose head was about level with the little chandelier. "I suppose it would be profanation to eat anything in this spick-and-span bower, so as I'm tremendously hungry, I propose an adjournment," he added presently. "Mother and I are going to wait for John. There are some last things to settle," said Meg, bustling away. "Beth and I are going over to Kitty Bryant's to get more flowers for tomorrow," added Amy, tying a picturesque hat over her picturesque curls, and enjoying the effect as much as anybody. "Come, Joe, don't desert a fellow. I'm in such a state of exhaustion I can't get home without help." "Don't take off your apron, whatever you do. It's peculiarly becoming," said Laurie, as Joe bestowed his especial aversion in her capacious pocket, and offered her arm to support his feeble steps. "Now, Teddy, I want to talk seriously to you about tomorrow," began Joe, as they strolled away together. "You must promise to behave well, and not cut up any pranks and spoil our plans." "Not a prank. And don't say funny things when we ought to be sober. I never do. You are the one for that. And I implore you not to look at me during the ceremony. I shall certainly laugh if you do. You won't see me. You'll be crying so hard that the thick fog round you will obscure the prospect. I never cry unless for some great affliction." "Such as fellows going to college, hey?" cut in Laurie, with a suggestive laugh. "Don't be a peacock. I only moaned a trifle to keep the girls company." "Exactly. I say, Joe, how is Grandpa this week? Pretty amiable?" "Very. Why, have you got into a scrape and want to know how he'll take it?" asked Joe rather sharply. "Now, Joe, do you think I'd look your mother in the face and say all right if it wasn't?" And Laurie stopped short with an injured air. "No, I don't." Then don't go and be suspicious.